Hey guys, what's going on? Shah here, and today there was an article posted about how the new Keystone Master achievement is going to work, along with some kind of elaboration on how the new scoring system is going to work. So I felt like I needed to kind of just chat about this because it's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart because I do a lot of Mythic Plus in game for those who follow the channel or know me as a player at all. So I'm going to talk about this from my perspective. I'm someone who pushes like mid-bracket keys. Haven't pushed in a while, but I've been like 20s, 21s, 22s typically. Some seasons I do a little bit more than that, but this season's just kind of been a lull. It's been dragging on, as most of us already know, so it just feels a little bit dry. But anyways, I want to talk about it from my perspective and exactly what's going on in this article. So I'm going to leave this article from Wowhead in the description below, so feel free to read it for yourself to kind of get the full details, but I kind of want to gloss over some of the kind of main points or main topics and just kind of give my general feedback because I haven't done a video like this in kind of a long time. I haven't really reacted to anything on Wowhead or reacted to any like PTR kind of content. So this is gonna try to kickstart that. So let's jump into what the article is talking about. Essentially what this article is elaborating on is how the new scoring system is going to work. For those who don't know, the new system is being implemented in 9.1, and instead of having to use a tertiary source like Raider.io, which is I'm sure still going to be around, obviously, Blizzard is implementing an in-game scoring system, and it's going to be a little bit separate than how Raider.io has worked in the past or any kind of scoring system up to this point. So essentially what they're doing is they're splitting into two categories. You have a fortified score and you have a tyrannical score, which in of itself has some pros and cons to it. One of the pros that they see is that they obviously think that one of those affixes are harder than the other. I'm not going to specify which, but it's also going to show the skill of a certain player being able to do either shine on fortified weeks or tyrannical weeks. So benefit of this is you now, like, despite it being maybe a really good fortified push week, it's also going to go to show how you perform as a player on a tyrannical week, which is kind of cool. But the downside of that, people are going to use that as like, hey, this person can do a 15 Halls of Atonement, but they've only completed an 11 Halls of Atonement on tyrannical. So maybe like they don't understand how the bosses work, or they're just like bad single targets. So unfortunately, I think another form of discrimination might come in with this kind of scoring system, I guess. But I do like the route that they're taking to add value to objectively an easier affix that rotates obviously bi-weekly from fortified to tyrannical. So that change is good, but it just seems like it's just another form of discrimination on top of already classes being discriminated against, specs being discriminated against, covenants being discriminated against, and then obviously the scoring system itself. People with low score are typically not invited as people with a high score. For example, like I can jump on my Guardian Druid who has like 2100 IO and get into any pug group I want. But then when I roll a new tank, despite me maybe knowing the routes or knowing how to play that spec, or like if I'm rolling a Druid alt, people are going to be like, he doesn't have high IO, so he might not be good. And I've seen this, I do the same thing when I'm pugging and looking for players. I'm going to typically value the people with a higher score. So this is going to kind of add to that dilemma already. So that's like my only negative take on this, but I think I'm rambling at this point. So let's talk about exactly what's going on. So for Keystone Master and the other achievements as well, you'll be able to read this article. So Keystone Explorer, Conqueror, and then Master. And I think there's a Keystone Hero achievement being added as well, which is like essentially plus 20s on every week, which is going to unlock those teleportations. But I'll talk about it in a little bit. So let's focus on Keystone Master. So Keystone Master is going to require 2,000 points or 2,000 score, essentially, or Mythic Plus rating, however you want to call it in game. They talk about somewhere in here, I don't remember, here it is. So an average plus 15 Keystone in time is going to be worth about 187 points, give or take 10, depending on how fast you do the key. So if you're like 2 or 3 chesting of 15, it's going to reward you a few extra points. And then on the downside, or on the other end of that spectrum, if you're completing with like a second left, you're going to get maybe a little less points, but on average about 187. Which means you'll need to do that on both Tyrannical and Fortified to get about to that 250 point mark. With there being 8 Mythic dungeons available, that's going to get you to about that 2,000. That math checks out, right? Okay, yeah, 8 times 250. So Essentially what you need to do is you're not going to be able to grind out Keystone Master in the first week of keys like you have been able to do in the past. There are a lot of groups, including myself, who've gotten Keystone Master week 1 of a season. This is no longer going to be doable because now you need to do the tyrannical version or fortified or whatever. Now, I shouldn't say it's impossible to get Keystone Master. So what's nice about this system is you need just 2,000 points, right? So if you're timing 20s or 22s or 27s, like the very top end, those are going to reward much more significant points, which means you don't necessarily have to do 15s in every slot both weeks. You can do, your 16s and 17s, and then maybe your 13s and 14s, and those point totals will eventually add up to your Keystone Master. So it is a nice change to the system, is that you're able to, really, let's just say your group, or you're really good at pugging mists, because it's just an easier dungeon, and you can get like the 17s and 18s done, or whatever that may be. But let's just say Sanguine Depths is a dungeon that you just dread, like everyone does, and it's just a difficult key. You can't find like good pugs, or your group doesn't have a Venthier or something like that. You're able to not do it as high of a key to get the Keystone Master achievement, which is kind of a nice change. It's really nice that there's not this just hard cutoff of plus 15 in every slot. Issue being is if you're a player who only pushes to 15, you now have to do it essentially double the times. You have to do it on a fortified and a tyrannical week, which again for pugs might be kind of difficult. So I want to make that clear. You don't need 15s in every slot. You need to get to 2,000 points, or the score of 2,000, Mythic dungeon score, to get to that point. Now it is saying in this article, it's specifying if you just want to get Keystone Master, just doing it on fortified weeks or tyrannical weeks for some reason, if you're crazy and run with like 3 fire mages or something, you would have to do it plus 24 of each dungeon to achieve that. So the score is going to come in from just doing both weeks, I guess, is essentially what it's coming down to. So I like this change personally. But before I talk about that, there are some cool season Keystone Master mounts that are coming into play. They're essentially just going to be recolors of, I think, the opposite. I think this one is Keystone Master and this one's for Glads, because this was like the KSM version and this was the Glad version for PvP. I think they're swapping it. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I might not be. You don't get 2 mounts for getting Keystone Master. You get, I think, the dragon. This time, this is like a undead, coolish maw dragon, which is pretty cool in my opinion. So, I guess I've kind of sprinkled it in here while talking about it, but my essential thoughts, I think this is a nice change. I like it. I like Keystone Master is going to be a little bit more work for the majority of the player base. It adds a little bit more prestige to that. I'm able to do 15s on not just fortified weeks, but also tyrannical. I have a group that's able to push. I like that it loosens up the restrictions, because there are people who are just struggling to get their keys done on like Sanguine Depths or the other side, or like an objectively more difficult key because there's more intricate mechanics when it comes to bosses or trash, I guess. So good change overall to that, because it loosens up the restrictions, but it also makes it a little bit more of a prestige. Now, the only downside I see to this is just the general discrimination that we already have in the game, like I mentioned before, with covenants, with class, with spec, and obviously already on top of IO, and now there's an in-game system. So there are players out there who don't use Raid or IO, they don't know what it is, and they don't care. I've ran into those players pugging, essentially. That's what I've been doing. I've stepped away from pushing keys and I've just been pugging, trying to figure out what players do. That's kind of been my project over the last couple weeks and months. But now that it's in game, it's going to be literally everyone is going to be able to see this. Not everyone's going to discriminate. Some people want a specific class, covenant, and those are already those are already in the game. Like those already happened, that discrimination. But now it's just adding another reason to not bring a player. So that's the only downside of this. But for the most part, pretty cool. I don't know if this is going to change. It seems like it's pretty consistent. They've been watching this for a few weeks now. If it does change, I will probably take this video down and re-upload the new version of it. But for now, that's how the new Mythic Plus scoring system is going to work in 9.1. I'm pretty excited for it. I hope you guys are too. If you guys have any questions, comments, let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to have some general discourse. And I will be doing also a boss video. I'm like working on it right now while I just felt like shooting this in between. Boss guide for Halkias in Halls of Atonement coming probably tomorrow. So watch out for that. But thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and take care.